Welcome to our first talk in the 2022 Coffee and Conversation series. So I am recording this and we'll make this available to all of the students after. And then we also have closed captioning on. If you want that, you can turn that on at the bottom of your screen. So our first speaker in this series is coming to us from Ghana, and you can see his lovely background there. And his name is Dr. Jacob Parachuga Anankware. Did I do that right? We practiced. Okay. So Jacob is a senior lecturer and the principal investigator and coordinator of the Healthy Insect Project. He's also the head of department in the Department of Horticulture and Crop Production, the School of Agriculture and Technology, in the University of Energy and Natural Resources in Ghana. And Jacob, his expertise is actually a bit unique. We haven't had a speaker like this before, and I'm really excited actually about this talk. So he is an entomologist, and he uses his research to develop affordable, readily available, easily accessible, and environmentally benign techniques to help revolutionize the agriculture and health industries, promote food, nutrition, and health security in Africa. And we are familiar with Jacob in our office because he's worked with our colleagues, Jody Laurie and Nancy Lockhart, to develop different food sources for pregnant women in maternity waiting homes in West Africa, so in both Ghana and Liberia. So Jacob is going to share a bit about his work with us today. And then we will have some time for discussion and Q&A at the end. But feel free to use the chat throughout if you want to start getting your questions in or writing them down, and then we'll open up for some discussion after we're finished. So I'd like to welcome Jacob. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon in Ghana and this morning here. And I am going to go ahead and share your slides. So just tell me how to move along here.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'll want to first of all thank the University of Michigan School of Public Health management team and all those involved in the Fogati fellowship. I had my first postdoc at the University of Michigan, and UMich has been very dear to me. I think it's by far the university I have enjoyed so much. Afterwards, I went to Purdue for my second postdoc under the auspices of the Mandela Washington Fellowship, and then later my third postdoc at the Humboldt University in Germany, and now the last one at the New York University. But UMich still stands tall. So before I continue, I would love to pay glowing tribute to Professor Jody, Nancy, Katrina, my colleagues from the university, Liberia, and Professor Cheryl Moya. She's been such a wonderful person in my life. So I wouldn't love to take much of your time, but with time, I'll introduce the rest who mentored me at the University of Michigan. Okay, so this is actually work in progress. We are yet to publish it, so sorry, I will not be able to give you a lot of all the information that is in this work, and I know Jody and Co will pardon me for sharing part of our paper. Information from our paper, which is currently being reviewed for publication. So I'm humbled to be talking to you today on cultivating palm weevils as a food source for pregnant women in Ghana and Liberia. But today I will place emphasis on Liberia, and then maybe some other day. So this work was done by myself and two teams from the University of Michigan and Liberia. Next slide, please. So this is the outline of my presentation for introduction through materials and methods up to references. Next slide. Yeah, so food insecurity is a significant problem in low resource countries, where poverty and lack of resources results in much of the population becoming malnourished. This is according to Muller and Conwickel in 2005. Black et al. Also posited that women and children are especially at risk, and it's estimated that undernutrition is the underlying cause of over 1/3 of child death and 10% of total worldwide burden of diseases. Next. In Liberia, food insecurity is widespread, with about every fifth household considered food insecure, mainly affecting poor rural households. Nearly 2/3 of pregnant women in Liberia are anemic. In 2010, the University of Michigan and the Bond County Health Team established the first 6 maternity waiting homes in post-conflict Liberia. Next. What are maternity waiting homes? Maternity waiting homes are residential dwellings located near health facilities where women in the late stages of pregnancy stay to await childbirth and receive immediate postpartum services. In 2019, a worldwide survey assessment of the maternity waiting homes throughout Liberia was conducted, and we identified about 114 maternity waiting homes. Data identified access to nutritious food at the maternity waiting homes as a major barrier to women using these maternity waiting homes. Hence, the need to establish an edible and nutritious palm larvae farm or farms at these maternity waiting homes to serve as food, feed, and nutrition, and also for the women to sell for extra income. So why insects? Insects, because insects are the most diverse species of animals on Earth with over 1 million identified species. Please, if I'm too fast, slow me down. Why insects? Because insects are the most diverse species of animals on Earth with over 1 million identified species. And scientists and entomologists believe that those insects that are yet to be identified and named are actually more than 1 million. They require very little space, they require little water, they feed on waste streams, and they emit relatively fewer greenhouse gases. I think it's only termites and cockroaches that have been seen to actually emit some level of greenhouse gases, but the rest are seen not to emit greenhouse gases at all. In terms of consumption, they are nutritious animal food protein, and they have little or no zoonotic diseases. And why Africa? Africa, because insect farming can increase the resilience of food systems. And scientists estimate that by 2050, the temperatures can rise by over 3.5 degrees Celsius. And we also believe that insects are nutritious food sources that can fight undernutrition in growing population. And we are expecting that we'll have stunted children increasing by over 40% in the next few years by 2050. Next. And according to the USDA Agricultural Research Service in 2018, if you compare the larvae of the palm weevil to that of goat, cow, fowl, you will see the superiority of the protein and iron, whereas the palm larvae have 66.3 grams per 100 grams, the goat has 27, fowl has 24, fish has 23, and duck has 11. And whereas the larvae of the palm weevil has 30.8 milligrams per 100 grams, the goat has 3.8, fowl has 1.7, sheep has 1.6, and duck has 2.7. And we all know that iron deficiency anemia is one of the leading causes of maternal deaths among pregnant women and children in the developing world. Next slide, please. So this was work that I partook in 2019, where the World Bank wanted to investigate to know how many insect farms are being done on the African continent. We got about 849 in about 13 countries. You see Ghana is also being shown. And then, but the estimates are that we have about 1,800 active farms. And these are some of the edible insects that were identified. Some use as feed, others use as food. Next slide. Now, why this work? The palm weevil, according to Anankware et al. 2016 and 2021, palm weevil production occurs in many countries throughout Western and Central Africa. The cultivation of edible insects has minimal impact environmentally. That is what Van Hugh said in 2013. And Anankware also said, et al. Said, palm weevil larvae, farming is economically sustainable because it uses agricultural byproducts that are typically discarded as waste. Next. And from this slide, the first table I showed, you realize that these insects have very high protein and iron contents. Notwithstanding, they also contain vitamin B12, they contain minerals like zinc, potassium, and phosphorus. According to Van Hughes in 2013, the larvae's iron and protein content is comparable to that of fish and higher than that of pigs and cattle. Why did we undertake this intervention? The UMSN team and the other team just wanted to actually develop local knowledge for the startup, maintenance, and processing of edible insects through a training program. Two was to document successful larvae production from project evaluation participants' rearing kits after 2 complete cycles. 1 complete cycle is 2 months, takes 2 months. And the third was to evaluate whether income generation through insect farming will generate a sustainable source of revenue at rural maternity waiting homes. So what did we do? So the UMSN team sent down 2 people from Liberia to Ghana who were trained for 11 days. These served as master trainers who went back to Liberia and trained other midwives and traditional birth attendants, after which 4 maternity waiting homes were chosen. Next slide. So this shows you the map of Liberia and the Bond County in blue on the left. Then the right shows you the Bond County and the location of these 4 maternity waiting homes. Next slide. So you will realize that these maternity waiting homes are Fenituli, Nama, Janye, and Phoebe. Fenituli was established in June 2020, immediately after the team from Liberia returned. And then I joined them in September to establish the remaining 3 other 3 palm larvae farms in the other maternity waiting homes. Next slide. What did we do? So the participants tracked 2 palm weevil rearing cycles, that is 4 months, using harvest amounts, turnover barriers to implementation, and income generated as metrics. And the number of women attending the maternity waiting homes were also recorded throughout the study period from July to December 2020. Questionnaires were administered and the data manually entered and cleaned using Microsoft Excel. Pre and post knowledge scores were assessed immediately prior to and following the training intervention. SPSS was used for descriptive statistics, and chi-square and Pearson's correlation test were used to examine the differences in the pre and post knowledge assessment test. Results were presented in bar charts, graphs, tables, and pictures. Now in achieving objective 1, we try to look at the knowledge of their knowledge on the kind of feed substrate that were being used. So we realized about 50% said they use industrial waste, whilst 50% said they use agricultural waste. Next slide. We also tried to look at the ways in which these larvae were prepared. 50% said they prepared the larvae by grilling, 25 said by frying, and 25 said they prepared them by boiling for consumption. Then we also this talks about a pre and post training knowledge statistic. And you realize that there is a high significant difference between their knowledge at the initial stage and that of their knowledge after the training session. Whereas out of a scale of 10, they have the pre-test to have a mean of 2.3 and the post-test to have a mean of 7.75. Next slide. Now, this is data, the results that were taken to document successful larvae production from the project evaluation participants after 2 cycles. And remember, I said 1 cycle is 2 months. So from the left, you see the various sites. At the initial stages, 2 beans were inoculated per site, and some beans were given adults. You can actually start, eventually I will take you through the rearing process. If some were given larvae, others were given adults. So that might even contribute to some of the discrepancies in terms of the figures as time went on. So Nama had about 721 larvae harvested within the period, within the first 2 cycles. Janye 170, 187. I think Fenituli did not really do well. They had about 120. And with this, they needed to divert some of them into adulthood. It's just like when you have your adults, when you have fowls and they lay eggs, you don't consume all your eggs. You have to allow some to hatch and continue the cycle. And that was what we did. So eventually, we got adults from them so that they will be able to continue the cycle. Let's next slide. We also try to look at the number of participants versus the number of production cycles within that period. So 50% were able to do one cycle, 25% did two cycles, and 25% did three cycles within the period. Next slide. Now, we are also in developing local knowledge for the startup maintenance. We also try to look at the number of harvests per month. So you realize that about 12% said they harvested once in a month. 28% said they harvested twice a month, and 15% said they harvested 3 times a month. Next slide. Yeah, so we also try to look at the participants' response to the level of success of the project. So this was a yes or no, and 37.5 did not respond to this question. 50% said yes, and 12.5% said they were not successful with their production. Next slide. We also tried to look at the rate of demand of the palm larvae by the community members. And we realized that the participants said 75% of the participants said yes, there was demand from the community members, whereas 25% said there was no demand by their community members. Next slide. We also tried to look at the cost of larvae as reported by the participants. So 75% said they were able to sell their larvae between 500 and 1,000 Liberian dollars, whereas 25% said they were able to sell their larvae between 1,000 and 2,000 Liberian dollars. We also tried to find out whether there was a change in the price of the larvae between the time we started, from when we had not come and after the intervention. 25% said yes, and 75% said no, there was no change, significant change in price. So in conclusion, an edible insect project using palm larvae is a promising solution to food insecurity for expectant mothers at pre-established maternity waiting homes in rural Liberia. Edible insects rearing has the potential to generate income for these maternity waiting homes, and we expect that future studies should focus on addressing the common barriers of remote implementation and metric tracking during the COVID-19 pandemic and reinforcing infrastructure to protect larvae rearing supplies. Now I'm taking you through the processes, pictorial evidence of the work that was done. Please go to the next slide. Despite the success we chalked, we faced a good number of challenges. There were limited vehicles for community visitation and monitoring, and some of the communities did not really get the needed support. There was also a weak community leadership. At a point, we also realized that there were parasitoids. Parasitoids are insects that parasitize on the larvae. They feed on these larvae, and I'm sure people will ask questions and I'll have the opportunity to explain further. There was also lack of feed for the palm larvae in some of the communities which did not have palm trees, so we needed to use alternative feed substrates. And out of the lot, at the end of the survey, we realized that 16 people were serious. Next slide. Now, I have been talking about the palm larvae. How much time do I have? I've been talking about palm larvae. What exactly is it? In English, we call the palm larvae. Scientifically, it's called the Richonforus phoenicis. We have 3 different species. The Richonforus phoenicis is in Africa, Richonforus palmarum is in America, and Richonforus ferruginus is in Asia. Next slide. So this is a summary of the life cycle. Eggs are laid within 3 to 5 days. They hatch into young grubs. Can you see my cursor? Okay, this, can you see my cursor? Yeah, these are the eggs. Eggs are hatched, and then they lay, those eggs hatch within 3 to 5 days, and within 21 to 28 days, depending on the quality of the feed and the environmental conditions, they grow into this big larva. And this larva is ready for consumption. If you don't consume them after 21 to 28 days, they weave a cocoon, and then they stay in this cocoon for a whole month and eventually emerge as adults. you will be able to identify a male from a female using the proboscis. Whereas the female has a long, fine, and smooth proboscis, rostrum, the male has a beard-like structure. Entomologically, we call them setae, hair-like structures on the notum, and it's usually shorter than that of the female. That is how to identify a male from a female. Next slide. So what you do is you actually put 3 pairs or 5 pairs, depending on the size of your rodent bin. So this is the structure that the University of Michigan put in the in Fenituli. Next slide. This is the point we were inspecting the bins at Fenituli. Next slide with participants. These are larvae that were harvested from Fenituli. So what you are seeing here is palm. They actually use pawpaw. When they run out of feed, they put pawpaw. And you know, the pawpaw has a high moisture content, water content. So it's as a result of the feeding activities that you can see the larvae in these mushy pawpaw. Next slide. This, after I told you, after the larvae, they form a cocoon. The cocoon is made from the fiber of the material. So this is what you are seeing. What I'm holding in my hand down there is a cocoon. Next slide. So these cocoons are harvested and placed in another container for a period of 3 weeks to 1 month. And usually during the feeding activities, water may be generated. So you need to periodically pour that water, otherwise the larvae may drown. And this is something I was explaining to the participants at Fenituli. Next slide.
Jacob, can I ask a quick question? So you mentioned that you don't want to consume all the larvae, that you do want to keep some adults in order to keep this process going. So is there like a percentage or a certain amount of adults, I guess, that you're trying to keep through this process?
Great question. So after your first cycle, we advise that you keep 70%, continue the process, and consume 30% until you are able to produce huge volumes, at which point you can consume 50-50 or even 70-30 because they have a high fecundity.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Next slide. So this was the point that I had to pause, pick out the rodent bins for them to ask questions that they do not understand. And this was at Fenituli. Next slide. So this is a cross-section of some of the health practitioners and the traditional birth attendants at Fenituli. Next slide. Okay, now this is NAMA. Next. At NAMA, we took them through, the attendance here was really huge. So we took them through the preparation. You need a rodent kit, and the rodent kit, you need just a container, a wire mesh, a rope, and a rubber band to hold the rope in place. This is a demonstration. I had to allow them to, after demonstrating for them, I gave them the opportunity to actually prepare their own rodent kits under my supervision. Next. And now this was the time for them to identify the male from the female. Next. Yeah, so then we now put the feed, which is usually the inner core of dead palm trees or a combination of cassava and maize, or either of them. And these were dead larvae that I observed in the cohort I traveled to Liberia from Ghana with. Next slide. So this was the point I had to pause and listen to their questions. So this is a computer that had all the PowerPoint presentations that were used for the oral presentation before the practical training. Next slide. So we were now taking them through the actual inoculation and how the eggs look like within, because they lay their eggs in crevices within the feed. Next slide. So we're explaining the pupation stage because people will not usually know how at a point when the PP have developed, you can actually put them in a black polythene to increase the temperature, which will expedite the rate of emergence. And that was the point. So you see what they are holding are the complete setup. So you have the container with a metallic wire mesh to prevent the adult from escaping. And then you have this rubber band, a yellow rope used to tie, but you need to put a rubber band. Other than that, the rope, the yellow rope can easily slip. And now you can see labels. So we needed to label. You label whether you are starting with adults or larvae, the date of inoculation, and the type of feed. All this is written on the rearing kit for easy identification and monitoring and data collection. Next slide. So this was also the point where we're showing them how to use the palm milk for inoculation. Next. Yeah, this is cassava. If you're using cassava, what to do, you soak it and then you put the larvae. So you can actually see the cassava with the palm larvae inside. Next slide. They will break this into fibrous material after a few weeks. This is another training session after the participants have finished setting up their own rearing kits. Next slide. Okay, so we decided to take a group picture in Nama. Okay, now this is Janye. Yeah, so this is their facility. We got there when they had not finished putting it up, so we needed to help them. So, okay, next slide. So the pregnant women as well as the health personnel came out for this training. This was during the COVID pandemic, so we're all in our nose masks. Next. Yeah, so I was taking the screen, the computer to them to see the various life stages prior to the practical session. Next slide. Okay, we're now doing identification of the male from the female. Next slide. And then I demonstrated to them and gave them the opportunity to now prepare the rearing kit on their own. Next slide. So this was cassava being used to inoculate. This time it has been chopped into much smaller pieces. Next slide. Okay, so this is an adult inoculation. This is another stage. Next slide. So we're now identifying the cocoons that had been formed from the larval stage. Next slide. Okay, so we needed cocoon. You can actually use after drinking the coconut water, you can use the coconut husk to prepare feed for pupation because it has a lot of fiber. And this is what I was demonstrating to them. Next slide. So this is a further demonstration on the setting up. And the second photo is showing you how the shredding of the coconut is done. You can see I used the cutlass, placed a wooden slab on the floor, and then I chopped it into pieces. And then placed everything in the bowl, after which is covered once the larvae are inoculated. Next slide. So I helped them to finish up this particular insectarium because it wasn't complete at the point we had finished the training and supplied the bins. Next slide. Yeah, so we did that and then set up those rearing bins. Next slide. Okay, so this was the complete setup at Janye. Next slide. So this is Phoebe, which is next slide. And we also did a training there that was on a different day with a pregnant woman. Next slide. We took them through the identification of the male and the female. Next slide. So this was, hold on. You see, there is this small girl who was about 12 years old. Yes. I think 12. And that was the first time I saw a 12-year-old carrying pregnant. Next slide. Okay, so at this point, the small girl decided not to take part in the picture because she felt embarrassed, and I didn't want to make her feel that bad, so I asked her to stay out if she didn't want to. Next slide. Yeah, so this brings us to the end of the community engagements, and we are simply recommending that project organizers should provide financial support for the purchase of feed. I think UMH did that for some time, and I think if there are future engagements with regards to the rearing, such organizers should do same, and trainers should visit the rearing sites at least once in 2 weeks to do more on-site mentorship. And also think this next slide, I think this is something that I raised and they were considered. So this is one of the projects that I am working on with my team from Denmark, Uganda, and Kenya. We've got about 1.6 million euros. That's 12 million Danish kroners from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I am the principal investigator for Ghana. In Kenya, we have about 4 others, ranging from three institutions, three universities and 1 center for insect physiology and ecology. And then Uganda, the University of Makerere. Next slide. So these are some of the references. You can go to the end of the slides. And thank you very much for your presence and attention. So I'll pause here and take questions.
Thank you so much, Jacob. I also just want to say I really appreciate the pictures. I have not been to Liberia in a long time, and it was very fun to see some of the people and places that I remember. So Jen, do you want to go ahead and get us started with questions?
So this is a really interesting interdisciplinary project, and I'm wondering, sometimes health providers get siloed in their own fields. Like, how did all of you connect with each other to get this project off the ground?
Thank you very much. I haven't seen the person talking, but I think, was that Jennifer?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so thank you. In 2017, I came to the University of Michigan for my postdoc. I worked on edible insects and under the mentorship of Professor Cheryl and 2 other professors. And that was how everybody, we came from different backgrounds. Some came from the medical sector, and I came with a very funny project, edible insects. So, and so that was how it all started. So when eventually the University of Michigan set up these maternity waiting homes and realized that edible insects are consumed in Liberia, they connected with, I think Professor Jody connected with Cheryl about the possibility of getting these insects being produced, because they're not domesticated in Liberia and Ghana. They are simply harvested from the wild. And that is dangerous because you need to compete with other wild animals and even snakes for these nutritious edible insects. So I think that is how come Professor Cheryl Moya, gave my contact to them, and then we linked up. And since then, this marriage has been a wonderful one.
I think, Jacob, I think the other thing I would add is the problem that Jody kept having with the maternity waiting homes was food insecurity. So it seems that your relationship kind of addressed that, thought about how to address that, a consistent problem for these pregnant women.
Yes, because she and the rest of the team actually went into Liberia to try to help the pregnant women, because they have after the war, they had very few hospitals. They have terrible roads. So pregnant women, before you even transport a pregnant woman from home to the nearest health clinic, she'll probably just give birth by the roadside. And sometimes when they even give birth, they struggle with nutrition and all that. So the University of Michigan decided to intervene by creating these maternity waiting homes so that expectant mothers can stay close to these health facilities, and then, I mean, for safe delivery and for a secured source of nutritious food. And that is the wonderful work UMH is doing around the world. Maybe some of you may not know, but this is the kind of wonderful work they are doing. And since their intervention, many women, I mean, there has been a reduction in deaths among expectant mothers.
So Jacob, there are actually a couple more questions in the chat. Narcissa, do you want to read your question? Oh, I think you're on mute. No? If you're not able to, I can.
Did she write the question?
Yeah, it's in the chat here. I think she's...
Okay, I've seen the question.
Okay, so...
I think it's coming from Narcissa, right?
Yes, the first one there.
Weevil consumed live. Okay. Okay, and how did you determine that palm larvae was high in protein and iron? Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, palm larvae are consumed when cooked. You can either cook or grill or boil. The only time I saw somebody consume them live was when I was a country director at a spy food group, and a journalist came from Europe. I think he was French, but he came to cover me for the Guardian newspaper, and he was trying to show that he's daring, so he picked the live larva and ate it. That was the first time I saw somebody eat the live the live larva. And how did you determine? Yeah, so we did proximate analysis. First, I did those proximate analysis at the Kwame Nkrumah when I was a PhD student at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. And then I repeated the same at the International Center for Insect Physiology and Ecology in Nairobi, Kenya. They have one of the best entomological research centers, I don't want to say in the world, but on the African continent, yes, and it's among the most prestigious research centers for entomological work around the world. So that was where I did that, and I came out with this. And then the USDA department also came out with figures comparing this with other conventional sources of protein. Now, Fat said, can you go back to the methodology slide for me, please? Sure.
So Fat, I'm going to reshare at the slides here. Let me know if this was the one you were looking for, or if it was something else.
Yes, I think that's the slide. Thank you.
Yeah. Did you have any questions on this, Fat, or just wanted to see it again?
I just wanted to see it again. Yeah. I do have other questions though, but I'll just raise my hand and wait till you guys go through the other ones on the chat.
Are you sure? You can go ahead and ask one now.
Yeah, I mean, I was just curious, like, so the training that you did, is that for, like, is rearing larvae something that like families in the communities can do? Because it feels like the material is very like simple. And so I was wondering, like, with the right education, you know, can people grow their own?
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, so it's so simple to do, and it does not take so much time. You only need to spend 2 to 5 minutes every 2 days to just check your setup. That is something that everyone, including the aged, can do. And you only check to see if there are parasitoids. You only check to see if there's water, so much water, because the feeding activities, if you're using palm yolk or the pawpaw, carica papaya, I mean, there is that tendency for water to be generated. And so if you don't check periodically to pour out excess water, you may drown your larvae. So this is something everybody can do. It's very easy. Once you have your kit, the only difficult aspect is the feed, because traditionally, or in the wild, these animals feed on the inner core of dead palm trees. So you need to harvest, but we have been able to come out with alternative feed substrates so that people and pregnant women don't have to go to the bush to get the feed. So we use cassava, we use inner core, we use maize, we even use plantain, pseudostems, and things like that. So it's something that everybody can do, and it's very easy.
And then I was also curious for the price that you mentioned in the slide, is that the price of like producing the larvae, and how does that compare to, is that considered like expensive or inexpensive compared to, you know, producing other animal meat?
These are, because these prices are cheaper than conventional meat. But what is now pushing the prices, because it's not easy to get it. People love it's a delicacy. You see, so and because it's a delicacy and the demand outweighs the supply, the price is going up. So we are trying to encourage them to produce and then be able to sell and make extra money. I think $100 Liberian is equivalent to $1 American dollars. So it's not really such a big deal.
Thank you so much.
You're most welcome, Fat. Am I pronouncing your name well?
Yeah. Yeah.
Jacob, I have one other question about that kind of builds off what Fat was asking. And so on this slide, you talked about using industrial substrates versus agricultural waste. And so it seems the agricultural waste is like the cassava, the coconut husks, the maize. What is an example of the industrial substrates that were used?
Usually, if you look at the breweries, they use malted barley for beer, for malt, and other drinks. So the waste gotten from that, it's an example of the industrial waste. And then people who also brew local beers, the waste that is gotten after the juice is taken from the malted barley is an example of an industrial waste.
Terrific, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I think there was actually one more question in the chat from Julie.
Yeah, and the question says, thanks for the lovely presentation. I love bags. Good, yeah, my. Oh, good. Can you talk more about the reasons for lack of community support? Please describe any efforts to change attitudes towards eating the palm larvae. Okay, in terms of the lack of community support, usually, when I engaged a few of the participants, they felt their partners before. What happens is when you're going to a maternity waiting home, you're expected to go with some food on your own, okay? Because you will need to feed for probably 2 weeks or even 3. In the communities where the households are not really doing very well, the rice that the pregnant woman would take to the facility is of concern to the husband. He thinks you are carrying a chunk of our food to the maternity waiting home and blah, blah, and that. So usually, sometimes they just come with 2 or 3 cups of rice. And that is not enough to even sustain them for more than 3 days. So we are expecting that even if the husbands are not responsible, the community should cajole or convince or coerce the husbands to be responsible. In Ghana and other African communities come together to form cooperatives to help some of these communities. I did not really see that in Liberia. The community chiefs can say, okay, let's do, every farmer should bring maybe a few cups, because I'm using rice because in Liberia, if you give even 10 burgers to a Liberian, typical Liberian, and give him a whole fowl to eat, and at the end of the day, ask him, and he doesn't get rice to eat, and ask him, have you eaten? He says, no, I haven't eaten. Rice is their staple food. So they love rice so much. And so this is the kind of community support we were expecting to see. You understand? So we needed more of this, and we are appealing to the community leadership. In some of the presentations, chiefs came, and we appealed to them to try, because now, because of the intervention of UMH, pregnant women are no longer dying like they used to do. So if this is something that has come to benefit you, why don't you also make an effort? At least when, even in the procurement of food for the levy, the community can get mobilized some young men to even do that for the pregnant women. And that is the kind of support we expect the community leadership to do. And describe any efforts to change attitude towards eating the palm levy. Frankly speaking, we don't have issues with people consuming the levy. People love them. So it's just like trying to convince an American to eat a burger. You love your burgers. So we love our palm levy. So yeah, so I don't think there's, so what we should, because now the supply, even, I mean, the demand outweighs the supply. So it's something that we already struggling to do. I hope, Julie, I hope I'm able to respond to your question. But
Yes.
if you're not, you can tell me and I can expatiate on that.
Thank you, Jacob.
You're most welcome. I can see Narcissa's hand is up. Okay,
Yes.
my
Can you
beloved
hear me now?
Nancy asking a question.
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, please come, please come.
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to just piggyback off of the community support. Do you think that this will be a sustainable project that will just kind of outlive itself, continue on in the area?
Thank you so much. That is our real intention. Our intention is that this project should outlive us. This intervention should stand the test of time. So the people have embraced it, they have learned the techniques, and it is easy to run. We gave them logistics. UMH gave them a structure, because if you don't have a structure, rain, water can drown or get into your rearing beans and drown them. Excessive heat can kill the larvae. So if UMH has been able to give you a structure, they gave you a rearing kit, give you a startup, I mean, the onus now lies on the beneficiary to also make a conscious effort not to consume all his or her larvae, and to also continue to train other people. That is where we even expect the community to also come in, because some of them participated in the training session. So once they do that, and they're able, some communities, some maternity waiting homes were able to sell the larvae and even made money. And if many are able to do this, it will serve as an extra source of income for them to even buy conventional meat if they don't want to consume the larvae on a particular day, or buy their favorite rice to augment whatever supplies they have.
And you haven't seen a backlash, because I know you're talking about the husbands, you know, they need the support, or they need to support the women as they go to these maternal waiting areas and have, you know, for food and everything. But do you see a backlash as the women are kind of using the palm weevil larvae as a source of income? Do you see their husbands having any issue with that, or men having any issue with that?
Thank you for the thought-provoking question. This is probably from my own perspective, because we did not really investigate to see if there will be such a backlash. But in some communities, people who are not enlightened, this includes many, communities around the world, when women begin to earn more, then they get intimidated. When they begin to be self-sufficient, they begin to get intimidated, because they feel the lady will no longer respect them because she's an equal or a better provider of resources for the home. But personally, this shouldn't be an issue. I am a lecturer, a scientist. My wife is a banker with a central bank. She earns more than me at a point. But I mean, I shouldn't have an issue with that. So backlash, I won't write it off, because some men may tend to be, I mean, as I said, be intimidated because they think once the income levels of the woman goes up, and it's a human character for somebody who is self-sufficient to begin to also want some level of control. It's normal for me. I see it to be normal, but some people may not have that maturity to understand this. So it's possible. I will not write it,
Okay. Thank you.
but I don't expect that to be a big issue. At the end, communication is key in every relationship. It's about how you communicate with your partner. It's about how the support you get from that partner to be able to increase production, and how effective you communicate with regards to how expenses or the money will be expended. Yeah, I can see Jennifer's hand is up. Before I respond to Nancy's question, Jennifer, your hand is up.
So I had two related questions. The first was, how many people can one insectarium feed? And then the second question was, if people are not harvesting, because you said some of the communities didn't harvest the weevils every month. What do they do if they're not harvesting? Is it like bad for the weevils? Do they get overcrowded? What's the next step if people aren't eating the weevils?
Okay, so now the life cycle of the insect. Let me take you through once more. Thank you so much for this question. it's now the adult lays egg. Within 3 to 5 days, it hatches, and then it hatches, and it needs 21 to 28 days to grow into this big larva you are seeing on the right. That fatty grub. Yeah. And after 28 days, if you don't harvest it, it will take the fiber and weave into this cocoon, and it will stay there for a whole month. So the period from the egg to the larva, the mature larva, is already 1 month. And the larva to an adult emerging from a cocoon is another month. So that's 2 months. So that is a complete cycle. So if we give the farmer an adult, okay, the adult will have to lay egg, and the egg will hatch. And if at the end of the 1 month, the person realizes that the larvae are few, maybe due to mortalities or whatever, the person will not consume in that month. The person will have to allow the cycle to go through the pupation stage, come out as an emerged adult, because one adult can lay about 300 eggs. Are you getting my point? So that may be one reason.
Yeah.
Another reason. Yeah. So that may be one reason. So another reason may be that the people probably face challenges with production, because some were giving adults, others were giving larvae. So if you're giving an adult, it will have to lay the eggs, and the eggs will have and then you will be able to get a lot. But if you're giving only larvae to go through the cocooning stage, then you will have a much longer cycle or time period to wait for before you can consume. Okay, I think you asked another question, right? There were two.
Yeah, it was how many people can one insectarium feed?
So now, in an insectary, you realize that most of the insectaries were not full. One bin, you can put 3 pairs of larvae, 3 males, 3 females, and each female can lay about 300 eggs. So one bin is expected to produce 1 kilogram of larvae, and 1 kilogram of larvae is about 150 to 180 individual palm larvae, depending on the sizes. So 1 kilogram can feed a household for 2 or 3 meals, depending on the size. And one insectarium can house more than 100 bins. All you need to do is to raise shelves, because if you put them on the ground, the surface area will be limited. But if you raise shelves, you can please go back to the slides, and I'll show you some of the shelves that were created. So can you go to the slides where the pictures?
I am. Just a moment here.
Okay, but I'm sure she gets what I mean. So if you have shelves, you'll be able to stack your rearing beans. And once you stack your rearing beans, you'll have enough surface area to have more beans. But if you decide to put them on the floor, it means you're limiting the number of, the surface area. So it depends on the number of beans you have. Yeah, please go down. Good. Yeah, that slide is fine. So you see that these are on a shelf. So you can even put, you see where my hand is showing, and behind my hand, those containers, there are still spaces that you can put more containers. And on top of where my head is located, there is still space. You can, okay, good.
There was another good one.
Okay, look at this gentleman. Yeah. So you have shelves here. They have only 2 here. The top is empty. They have just 1 or 2 at this side, and the rest is empty. And the top part of that shelf is empty. Where they are standing is empty. And I'm sure close to where the photographer took the picture, there are shelves to contain larvae. So you can actually stack and have enough space. And ideally, you see that the space between one shelf and the other is a lot. So you can even add, yeah, you see, there is so much space. So they can divide it into 2, and then you'll be able to stack and have more rearing beans and more larvae. Now, if I don't go to Nancy's question, next time she will not transfer money for us to go to the field. I've been reading that bees are also a good source of protein. Yes, I'm wondering if you have any experience working with bees. What controversy might arise when balancing bees as a human food source with bees as a pollinator for crops? Thank you so much, Madam Nancy Lockhart. Yeah, so bees are consumed, but the bees, adult bees, are not consumed. The only condition under which you may have live bees consumed is when the pupae are in the honeycombs and you're harvesting the honey. Then people will end up consuming the larvae alongside the honey. But you don't have situations where the bees themselves are consumed. Yes, I have had experience rearing bees. I developed a course when I came back to Ghana called Commercial Insects. I teach the African palm larvae, what I just presented, and I do practical work on that. I also teach beekeeping, and I help people to establish bee farms. I also teach the black soldier fly. It's a fly, it's a dipteran whose larva is bigger than the housefly. The adult stage does not feed, so it does not transmit diseases like the housefly does. It is only the larval stage that feeds, and it feeds on organic waste. It can be chicken manure, it can be organic waste, waste from the abattoir, fruits, and all that. And within 14 days, the larva is ready for harvesting. In fact, 9 to 14 days, you got to harvest them. Other than that, they will form a chitinous exoskeleton, which will not be digestible by your animals, whether fowls, pigs, or whatever. So I teach that course as well. The thing is that it has high protein. You know, Ghana and many African countries depend on fish meal and soybean meal as the main source of protein for their poultry. And that is why we tend to import a lot of chicken from America and Brazil and China because of the high cost. And most of the feed that is even produced, we need the fish meal, and most of our fish meal is gotten from Russia. The Russian fish meal is the best in terms of protein. But these insects that I'm referring to have have equal or superior fish meal, have protein content. So I teach that course. I also teach sericulture, silkworm production. Yeah.
Jacob, it looks like there was one more question from Sarah.
And then before she comes on, I will plead that we spend maybe 5 to 10 more minutes because I have to be at the Canadian Embassy. Yep. Because to see if I can get a visa to go to Quebec to present a paper on 12 June. So if you keep me longer, I will miss my booking. And
yeah, we don't want to miss. We don't want you to miss that at all.
Okay.
Jacob, do you have time for that? Or we could also have you maybe follow up. One more. Okay, so it looks like the last question I can see says, is from Sarah. It says, if an adult can lay 300 eggs, what percentage of those eggs survive and mature to the larvae stage?
Brilliant question. I love that. Yeah, so what happens is, sorry, I'm not being sarcastic. Please, Sarah, don't get me wrong. Not all pregnant women will give birth. There may be miscarriages and all that. Not all eggs laid by a fowl will hatch. And not all the chicks that will be hatched from those eggs will survive up to adulthood. And that is the same issue we're having with the insects. Okay, so they lay a lot of eggs because, you know, insects like fishes tend to lay a lot of eggs because they don't give parental care. And there are a lot of challenges. So some of the eggs may not be fertilized. And those that are fertilized, some of them will be parasitized by predators and parasitoids. And those that will hatch, if you have bigger larvae and the feed is limited, there is likely going to be cannibalism. So all these factors will reduce the number of eventual larvae you would have. Now, her other question is, have you seen a lot of partnership through the different maternity homes since some of you some were more successful than others? Yes, two of them were close and they were collaborating, but one was far away and it was difficult. So that is why we needed the master trainers or a monitoring team to be monitoring them. And I think Nancy's last question, I did not answer. What controversy might arise when balancing bees as a human food source with bees? Yeah, so for me, once we're not eating the bees themselves, but are eating their products, I don't see any problem with regards to balancing them as a pollinator. My only concern is the persistent use of pesticides on our farms. These pesticides kill a lot of the bees because they tend to roam a lot and they pick little doses of the chemicals that are being used. And that is the problem that I rather have. But with regards to consumption, and no bee farmer will also harvest all the honey. Because if you don't take time and harvest all the honey, your bees will starve. You gotta harvest some and leave some for the bees to survive. And then one question from Michelle, just a reminder for our next coffee and coffee. Okay,
mine was just an announcement for everyone.
Okay, so I can take one more.
Any other questions for Jacob?
And this is was given to me by the U.S. Embassy, Ghana, America. And some of my colleagues who came were co-citizens of certain states in the U.S. I look forward to coming to Michigan again. And I just love the weather. I love the cool. That was my first time seeing snow. I think that was 2017, right? I know that is weird to most of you. That an adult man, and imagine an adult man seeing snow for the first time. You're jumping into the snow, carrying it, and misbehaving with it. And when I came and you guys were wearing 3-4 jackets, I just wear one and my coat, and then I hold my winter coat. And they say, what kind of guy is this? I say, I'm from a very hot part of Ghana. And I've bath so much sun that I still have enough sun to contain the ice. That is just by the way.
Jacob, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. This was an excellent start to our Coffee and Conversation series. And clearly there was a lot of question and interest in learning more about what you do. So thank you so much for your time. Good luck at the embassy. And we do hope to have you back to University of Michigan sometime soon, hopefully.
It is my pleasure. And I am very, very grateful to all of you, especially Professor Sharamoya, Jody, Nancy, and you, Michelle, for being a wonderful host. Katrina, I don't know whether it's that Katrina that I published with at the University of Michigan, or it's a different Katrina.
It's a different Katrina. That one I know graduated, but.
Good. So you guys should feel free to call upon me anytime to present. I'm always, UMich is my favorite university. Even if you give me 1 week's notice, I will work. I will present. So feel free, you guys should. And I look forward to coming once again physically. I came when I didn't have white beard. Now I've got some white beard.
Well, thank
Okay,
you,
thank
Jacob.
you. All
And
the
then just
best.
a reminder, everybody, we do have another coffee and conversation next Tuesday at 8 a.m. Eastern. A very different topic. We'll be talking about deportation making its way into your body, 3 mechanisms by which immigration enforcement can harm your health. And we will see you all then. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Have a great day.